So today we're going to talk about the attachment styles. What are the attachment styles? So attachment style is actually a specific pattern or behavior that we have when we're in relationships or around of relationships. And it's our way that we tend to respond to others. Attachment styles don't only have to do with a relationship as in romantic. It can do as well with work, with family. So it's not just in the romantic relationship, but it shows more in the romantic relationship. So it's basically how we behave in general. Now, how do we measure the attachment styles? And then I'm going to go. So, we need to know that there's 4 types of attachment style. Now, some research have measured them through avoidance and anxiety. So as you can see here, if you have high avoidance and high anxiety, then you're avoidant. Low anxiety, then you're avoidant. The healthiest one is actually the secure one because there's low avoidance and low anxiety. Now, so we have 3 insecure attachment styles and 1 secured. So you have the anxious, we call it as well the preoccupied, the avoidant, which is the dismissive, the fearful avoidant, which is the disorganized, and then finally the secure. Usually people start with the secure and first. I rather leave it for the last. So where does this all start? How do we learn to have this attachment style? Basically, attachment style starts within childhood, and it can start as young as 7 months. So basically, some studies will show us from 7 months to 11 months. It's how our caregivers interacted with us. But it doesn't mean that if you had one attachment style in childhood, it's going to stay all along your adult life. It develops through adulthood, but it can change due to friendships, due to relationships. So you might have been a child that had a very secure attachment style in childhood, and then, you went into certain relationships and the partner has cheated or lied or left you for no reason. And this is where you can develop an anxious attachment style. Most of the time we build it in childhood, and so it's part of how our caregiver has dealt with us or dealt with our needs or dealt with the stress, and usually so our perceptions are shaped by the relationship that we had or that were suppressed as a child. Now, Bowlby is one of the psychologists, and I'm sorry I'm going there, but we need to give respect to the person who actually did the studies. Bowlby is one of the psychologists that did the research when it came to the attachment styles. And he said that one of the relationship that we have with one of our caregivers has a direct impact on our social, intimate, and work relationship. Basically, what we do is that we're mirroring the relationship that we have with that specific caregiver. It can be the mother, it can be the father. Now, when we're talking about caregivers, it doesn't automatically have to be the direct parent, because sometimes the direct parent is not there, but then the main caregiver, for example, can be the grandmother or the grandfather or an uncle or an aunt. But it's that specific caregiver that we tend to mirror and mimic in a way the relationship. So we believe that it's formed, as I said earlier, between 7 months to 11 years. And it depends on how our caregiver responded to our emotional stress cues as a child. So were they there when we needed them? How did they respond to our needs? How did they respond to our anxiety? How did they respond to our stress? How did they deal with us? Physically, were they present? Were they not present? And emotionally, how they learned to deal with us in the same time. So it can be very much, as I said earlier, influenced as well by relationships. So friendship, past relationship, it doesn't stick, right? It like kind of changes over time. And sometimes it stays exactly the same. So here we're going to talk about the anxious, the anxious attachment style, the preoccupied. So here we tend to act out. A person who has this attachment style would act out. For example, they're out, the partner's not giving attention, right? And they start to become jealous. They will pick a fight, or they will pick another individual to try to make their partner jealous. And this is how they tend to act out. They're very insecure about their relationship. They're constantly hungry for validation. They constantly need to know that the partner loves them and cares about them. And even sometimes, even though the partner will continuously say, I love you, I care about you, they will not believe it, and they will keep on trying to feed that hunger. And sometimes what actually happens is that the partner just gives up and is like, no matter what I'm doing, it's never enough. And they go away. And this is where we come a bit into the belief. And that person goes like, you see, I was right. He didn't love me enough. He didn't care about me enough. But what we actually did is we actually self-sabotage the relationship. And we constantly need the assurance as well. The nervous system of this person is very, very sensitive. More and more studies are showing. Yeah, sure, Christelle, tell me.
I have a question related to this part with the anxious one. So you were talking about validation or actually pushing the other person to do things. Would it be, for example, if you're never satisfied with anything and you're like always pushing the other person to do more, would it be related to the anxious as well kind of behavior?
So can you explain a bit more? What do you mean about pushing the other person? Pushing them to satisfy your needs or doing something for them?
No, it's more like it's for them, but yet you benefit from it.
Okay, so let's say you want him to be, it depends on the intention, right? If I want that person to be the best for him, then that's fine. But if I want that person to be the best for me, and already I'm not accepting that person, then yeah, you kind of fall a bit within the anxious, but you can fall on other attachment styles.
Okay, thank you.
Sense? But it all depends on your intention, basically. When you're anxious, when you have the anxious attachment style, mainly it's about validating yourself and validating the love that they have for you, which is never enough. Now, this is a bit another topic, and I will be talking about it, is when we want that other person to be the best, but what suits us. And this is where we kind of have the ego and the, you know, the we don't feel safe, basically. It falls more under, if you want, let me just, because my thoughts are flowing, but let me just take a minute to be able to express it properly. Sometimes it's not accepting the individual for who they are. And it goes within our beliefs. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So here you struggle in communicating. People who have the anxious attachment style, they have a hard time communicating. So communication, it's not just talking, right? It's expressing your emotions, expressing your feelings, expressing your thoughts and your worries. And they have a very, very hard time communicating that. They're very clinging. They're anxious if their partner does not, for example, and you will realize a lot of us, I'm saying a lot of us, but it's very common around us. We would see someone, for example, if they text their partner, man or woman, I'm not doing a gender differentiation, but man or woman, if I send a message to my partner and my partner doesn't text back straight away, I become very anxious. And this is where we tend to spiral a lot, you know, and this comes from the belief and from the fear of abandonment. You know, the belief of, for example, you texted your partner, he didn't answer straight away, yet you see the online, or she didn't answer straight away and you see the online, and then they disappear. Oh yeah, they're ignoring me, they don't love me, they're going to leave me. And you go into that whole spiral. But the person was maybe on a business call, just went in fast and went back out. It can be anything, but we tend to become super anxious when that person does not respond to our need at that specific moment. We feel that our partner doesn't care about us, you know, and all the time. It's not just at a specific moment, constantly. And we tend to try to look for the moments where they don't care about us. This falls a lot under our beliefs, and our belief system, we need to create it and to make it our reality. So in this belief, you know, the fear of abandonment, our needs have not been met, we need the validation, we are going to keep on seeking and seeking and seeking because the work has not been done. We could become very upset when the relationship ends. We become very upset to the point of maybe having a major depression or not being able to handle with what has just happened. And it's never nice when a relationship ends. I'm not saying that, yeah, the relationship ends, oh yeah, I'm going to be cool about it and let me move on. But what I'm saying is not going down that huge spiral, and where it's like you don't validate who you are anymore, you don't see who you are anymore, you just want to be, let's say, in this dark place and not be able to get out of it, or not doing anything to get out of it. Now, where does it come from? Well, usually it's because our caregivers were not consistent with us. They were not always present. They were not available to meet our needs as a child. So one moment they're there, the other they're not. They're not inconsistent with that. When we need them to meet our needs, they're there. And then another moment they're not there. And then they're there. And that's very confusing. Most of the time, the caregiver will actually have something which is called emotional hunger. And it's when that caregiver will actually come towards the child because they want to satisfy their own emotional need. They're coming close to the child when they need it, not when the child needs it. Children are sponges. They feel it, you know, and then one moment they're there and they're like, okay, my needs are met. And the other moment, my needs are not met. And it's very confusing. So they don't feel secure. This is how the insecurity comes in. So the caregiver most of the time has, or she has, the anxious attachment style. They fluctuate between being available, not being available, distancing themselves. They have difficulties in expressing emotions, and they fear intimacy. Is there any question when it comes to the anxious attachment style before I go to the avoidant?
All clear for me.
Okay. Fine for everyone?
Yeah, me too.
Great. So now you have the avoidant or the dismissive. That's the second type of insecure attachment style. The avoidant, as the words say, they tend to avoid. They tend to emotionally withdraw. They maintain distance. They keep people at arm's length. They have difficulties getting closer to other or trusting other, and they don't believe that their needs can be met. This attachment style has difficulties in asking for help because they basically don't trust their environment. They're emotionally unavailable. And they find sometimes, and you might hear them telling you, being in a relationship, it's suffocating. I can't, I'm not free. And this is usually because they tend to avoid intimacy. They tend to avoid relationships completely altogether. And this is not only relationship when it comes to the romantic relationship. They never go really in depth with people on an intimate level. Now, I really want to precise, when I say intimate, it's not sexual. Sexual intercourse or sexual relationship, whatever it is a type of intimacy, but you do have different types of intimacy. For example, spending time together, hugging, sharing something deep, exchanging the love languages. This is intimacy. So they will tend to avoid any relationship because they don't feel safe. They would rather be independent and only rely on themselves. Why? Because they have learned in a way that they can only rely on themselves, that they cannot ask for help because when they needed it, no one was really there. They become very vulnerable in time of crisis, of big crisis, and this is what they tend to avoid. And that's why they're avoidant and they keep people at arm's length, because they don't want to be in that vulnerable position. Where does this come from? It comes from when usually they are the one who parents the child. the caregiver ignored the emotional needs of the child. So for example, you know, child is going to be scared, or a child is not going to feel okay, or stressed or anxious or whatever it is. They're going to come towards the parent to try to soothe themselves. And the parent's like, oh, I don't have time for you right now. It's okay, go away. Or you'll even hear people that will tell you, and this is where the child, or even the teenager, will actually, or even the adult, will actually learn that my needs are not met. They're ignored by the person that I'm coming to. So my needs are not that important. And they will tend to avoid. They're often left alone. And this is where the, you know, not asking for help, I will do it by myself, because when they needed help, there was no one around them. They kind of tend to become hyper individualized, which is they will do everything by themselves because they don't trust the world around them to help them. It's fine. I can do it by myself. I don't need anyone. The reality is that we all need someone around us. We all need people to help us in certain time. We can't do everything by ourselves. And sometimes, you know, it's just having that support, just sitting down and talking to someone and releasing that. They disconnect because they have learned, don't be vulnerable. Vulnerable is a weakness. And it's not really the term of a weakness. It's just because they have learned, and a defense mechanism is, I'm not going to get hurt. So I learn not to become vulnerable. Vulnerability is a strength. It's not a weakness. The caregiver is not responsive. They're often dismissive, and they're distant. Again, they're not available to the child's need. So the child believes that their needs will never be met. And therefore, they don't ask for the need or for what they want. The third one, which is the insecure one, is the fearful avoidant. Okay. And the fearful or avoidant, basically, it's both the anxious and the avoidant. Now, I don't know if you know a bit in personality disorders, but one personality disorder that is very close from it. Now, be careful. I'm not saying people who have fearful or avoidant do have this personality disorder, but mainly those who have this personality disorder can fall under this, which is actually the, and there that one goes. So it's, sorry, it's going to come back. I'm sorry about this. So basically the main act as a care, so they mainly act as the caregiver, maybe towards the parent or towards another sibling. Okay. And they avoid strong emotional attachment, but in the same time, they crave both the affection and they avoid it. So they're in between. Okay, and they're not either or. Like, for example, the anxious, you know that he's very clinging, whereas the avoidant is very much stay away. They're always in that in between. Now, the fear for avoidant, they develop close relationship, and they're reluctant to create close relationship with people, but in the same time, this is what they crave the most. They want so much to connect, but in the same time, they're so scared about it. Their behavior seems to be inconsistent, and they fluctuate between extreme anxiousness and extreme avoidance. They keep on going into that, you know, if you want to call it that dance in a way. And there's high anxiety when it comes to relationship. They experience very high anxiety when it comes to relationships. They don't know how to regulate their emotions, and they have difficulty with intimacy. Now, if you remember the anxious attachment style, they have the fear of abandonment. The fearful avoidant has the fear of rejection. And they have a hard time regulating their emotions. Some of them are very hypersexually, and they are at risk of a violent behavior. So sometimes these individuals can become abusive physically abusive. And that's because they're not being able to regulate their emotions, or they don't know how to express within words. I'm not excusing the behavior, I'm just explaining the behavior, why they might tend to go towards being violent. Now, where does it come from? Where it actually comes from the caregiver that totally neglected the emotion as a child, and the boundaries were constantly disrespected and violated, your private boundaries or your physical boundaries. Most of the time, the caregivers are verbally abusive or physically abusive. They will tend to, for example, right, they won't respect the intimacy as in your bedroom. They won't respect as in your phone, your emails, whatever it is. They don't respect, they don't have boundaries, and they will keep on trying to cross these boundaries constantly. Your needs are being totally, the child needs are being totally ignored. Now, finally, we're talking about the secure attachment, and this is the healthiest one. The secure attachment, actually, their behavior is very flexible. They do understand that if in this moment the partner is not available or the partner might be busy, then that's okay, that's fine. I can go on with my life and I can do what I have to do. I don't have to constantly be around my partner or constantly avoid my partner. So I'm flexible within my behavior. I have healthy communication style. I'm able to express my emotions, my thoughts, and my feelings. I'm able to say when I'm worried or when I'm angry or when I'm mad. I'm able to express them, to use my words. And in the same time, they can regulate their emotions. They can soothe themselves. If they're angry or they're anxious, they don't depend on the partner to soothe them. On the contrary, they're able to soothe their own self in a healthy way, but yet when they still need to go towards the partner, they will go towards the partner. The avoidant, for example, will try to self-regulate their own emotions, but without having to do with the partner, even when they're in need of the help of someone else. They're able to ask for help, they trust the word, and they're trustworthy. They love and accept love. So this one is very important for me, because when you accept love, you're capable of loving. When you can't accept love, it's very difficult for you to love. When you can't accept love, you become within more of the anxious or the avoidant. If I believe I am worthy of love, if I believe I can be loved, I can love others. If I believe I'm not worthy of love, I'm going to try to do everything for the other person to love me or not love me, but I'll try to do everything for the other person to love me, and I will put myself in that submissive role, or in that clinging role. So it's very important to as well learn to love ourselves and to rise in self-love. They can easily become close to people. They can easily create deep relationships. They're not afraid of intimacy. They don't panic when the other person, as I said earlier, they don't panic when the other person needs time or space, or when they see, for example, that the partner hasn't responded straight away to their message, or they understand that the partner might be busy doing something else, but that doesn't mean that they're going to leave them or that they don't love them anymore. And they are dependent on others, but without being codependent. I am going to do a live about what is being dependent and codependency, right? Interdependency and codependency. When we are codependent, so anxious attachment style are codependent. Everything depends on the partner, our mood, what we do, how we feel, how we think. We can't live without the other person. We believe kind of like we're one with the other person, and we tend to lose even our self-worth, our self-confidence, and sometimes we even reach to a point that we don't dare to do anything because the other person is not with us. you will see most of the time, even when a relationship is over and we're codependent, we will build a codependency somewhere else with someone else. People who are codependent tend to not be able to be single. They always need to have somebody in their life, or they always need to somewhat be in a relationship with someone. The people who have secure attachment style, actually, they have trusting and long-lasting relationships. They have a very good self-esteem. They share their feelings, as I said, with their partner, but not only with their partner, as well with their friend, their surrounding, their co-workers. They seek social support. They don't run away from it. And where does this come from? Where basically it's when our caregivers were available to our needs, both emotionally and physically. They were attentive to our needs. They would listen to us. They will talk to us. They will soothe us when we are younger. And they will teach us that it's okay sometimes not to be okay and to be able to express. And they will be there next to us and they will listen to us and to what we have to say. They're loving, they're caring, they're soothing, as I said. They're available, basically, and they're emotionally available. And the secure attachment style is emotionally available. You won't be on eggshells around them. You won't feel that you need to be on eggshells. You won't be taking breadcrumbs, which is actually what the avoidant do, right? They put... like they leave us breadcrumbs. Sometimes they won't really invest in the relationship and they will just keep it very fluid. I will be talking as well about toxic relationship in another live. So here, just to like explain better, or for you to have a better notion about what are the different attachment style, there is Ainsworth, Mary Ainsworth, which was as well a psychologist, and she worked with Bowlby. She did an experiment which was called the strange situation. So she got mothers and she got children, and she placed the children in a room with toys on the floor. And she wanted to observe how the child would respond. There were other adults that were in the room at the same time, but she wanted to see how the child would respond with the parent around, and when the parent or the mothers would leave the room. And so here she actually. With the anxious child, what actually happens is the child is a bit distressed before the mother leaves, and very much distressed when the mother comes back. It's very hard to comfort the child when the mother comes back. It is believed that the child actually does that, not being able to comfort him. They do it on purpose because they're kind of punishing the parent for leaving. And this is the anxious attachment style. The avoidant, the child, even when the mother was around, would tend to avoid or ignore the mother before leaving. And they will show little emotions towards them when they came back. And that's kind of like, you know, there's something, the silent treatment. Well, that's what the child will kind of do. It will ignore the mother. And this is the avoidant attachment style. The disorganized child would show inconsistent behavior. So one moment they will be very warm and very caring towards the caregiver, and the other time they will just show aggressivity towards the caregiver. And there's mixed emotions, right? And as we said before, it's like the anxious and the avoidant mixed together. Now, the child that plays and explores freely what is going on around them, they become a bit distressed when the mother leaves, but as soon as the mother comes back and they're able to comfort them and soothe them really fast when they come back, this is a child that has a secure attachment style. If you recognize that you have any attachment style, how can you change it? First of all, it's identifying your relationship patterns. Now, you do have on the internet certain quiz that you can do to find out what attachment style you have. Then the second one is to work on your self-esteem. It's very important to work on your self-esteem. Get to really know what are your needs. Sit down between you and yourself and wonder what are your needs. If you can't really do it between you and yourself, it's okay to, you know, seek therapy or a therapist or a coach or anything to help you really find out what are your needs. Implementing self-love is as well something very important, and not to be afraid to reach out to therapy. Okay. Now I would ask you, if you really want to find out we could work together, you can go on the website, you can book your call, or you can join the group Value Yourself, Mastering True Self Love and Realization if you haven't joined the group yet. And on that group, you can get free and discounted materials such as the free masterclass Rise in Self-Love, webinars, lives, workshops, tutorials, ebooks, and more. So there you go. I hope that it was clear, that it was easier to understand. Can you tell me if you have any questions, if there's anything that you would like to ask me?
Everything was so clear, Hala. Thank you so much. It was really interesting.